Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep into the world of squirrels,
That's gonna be fun.
specifically their movement.
Right.
How do they adapt to life, both on the ground and up in the trees?
Yeah, like how does that even work? They're so agile.
Right. Our main source is a 2011 research article by Andre Schmidt,
Okay.
published in Zoology, the journal.
Nice.
And get this, we'll uncover how they essentially test a branch before fully committing their weight.
Whoa, like a little pre-check.
Exactly.
It's fascinating.
I'm already hooked. Their limbs must be so specialized for that kind of life, living in 3D like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the basics. Everyone's seen a squirrel bounding across the ground.
So effortless, right?
Totally.
Mm.
But how does it actually work?
Well, technically, that hopping movement is called a bound gait.
A bound gait, got it.
But here's the thing. Even though it looks symmetrical,
Uh-huh.
Schmidt found that even on flat ground, there's this subtle favoring of the left forelimb.
Really?
Yeah, when it's in the trailing position. Wait, trailing? So that's the limb that hits the ground first?
Exactly. It makes first contact, absorbs the initial impact.
With a little shock absorber.
Exactly. Kind of testing the waters.
Wow, so even on the ground, there's this element of caution.
For sure. But get this, things get even more interesting when they move from the ground to a branch.
Okay, how so?
Their whole strategy changes. Instead of bounding, they switch to what's called a transverse gallop.
A transverse gallop. Now, I'm picturing like some mythical creature.
Haha, it's kind of like that. Imagine a horse galloping sideways
Okay.
along a branch. That's basically it.
Wow. Why the change, though?
Well, this sideways gallop, it lets them slow down for stability on the branch.
That makes sense. Got to be careful up there.
Exactly. Plus, it changes the timing of their forelimb touches, like dramatically.
Oh, interesting. So slowing down and knees spreading up their steps.
You got it. It's all about safety.
Smart. So this change in timing, what does that tell us?
It lets us really see how those limbs are specialized for different tasks.
Oh, okay. Now I'm really curious. So up on the branch, what's that trailing limb doing differently?
Remember how we talked about it gently testing the ground?
Yeah.
Well, on a branch, it becomes even more specialized as the tester, the first one to hit.
Taking brunt of the impact?
Right. And it stays more upright and flexed.
I'm trying to picture this.
Think of it like you carefully placing your foot on uneven ground before committing your weight.
Ah, got it. Cautious first step.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then what about the other forelimb, the one that follows?
Yeah, what's its role in this whole balancing act?
That's the leading limb, and it's all about stabilization.
Okay.
Comes down after the trailing limb has given the all-clear signal.
So they're working as a team.
Totally. And once the branch is deemed safe, the leading limb stretches out more, lengthens the stride.
They get some momentum going.
Exactly. And it actually becomes stiffer to counteract any swaying or snapping.
Wow, so they're not just moving, they're constantly assessing and adjusting.
It's incredible, isn't it? Like a built-in risk management system for tree life.
Absolutely. But before we go any further, can we break down that shift in timing you mentioned, between the forelimbs?
Oh, absolutely. So on the ground, the leading limb comes down pretty soon after the trailing one. We're talking like 14% of the trailing limb's stance phase.
Hold on, stance phase. Need a quick definition on that one.
Of course. It's just the time the limb is actually touching the ground, or the branch in this case.
Got it. So 14% on the ground.
But then up on a branch, that percentage jumps to 50%.
Whoa, that's a huge difference.
Right. It really shows you how much more cautious and deliberate they become up there.
So like on the ground, it's quick two-step. But on a branch, it's more like a slow, careful waltz.
Perfect analogy. And it makes you wonder, how do they adapt when things get even trickier? Like, what if a branch starts swaying?
Oh, man. Yeah, lab setting is one thing, but the real world is.
A whole other level of challenge. We've got to talk about that.
For sure. But first, a quick break.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we were talking about how a squirrel's whole body gets involved when they're moving on those branches.
Right. It's not just about the limbs.
So what else comes into play?
Well, their sense of balance, for one. I
Right.
mean, have you ever seen a squirrel actually lose its footing?
Yeah, it's almost like they have some internal gyroscope or something.
Totally. And it's not just balance, it's proprioception, too.
Corporeal what now?
Proprioception. It's basically like the body's awareness of where it is in space.
Okay. So like spatial awareness, but for squirrels.
Exactly. Imagine having to constantly calculate the distance and angle of every jump. While the branch is swaying, there's wind.
Yeah, my head's spinning just thinking about it.
Right. And we can't forget about that bushy tail.
Oh, yeah, for sure. What's its role in all this?
It's not just for show. It acts as a counterbalance, helps them stay upright, and it could even work like a rudder.
A rudder.
Yeah, like to make adjustments midair if they misjudge jump.
So it's like a built-in stabilizer A&D steering system. Squirrels are too cool.
They really are. But remember, Schmidt was looking at squirrels on a pretty stable branch in the lab.
Right, controlled environment.
So it gives us a good foundation, but it's only part of this story.
Okay, so how do they deal with, like, branches swaying in the wind or even breaking?
It's all about adjustment, adaptation. Remember how Schmidt found they push medially with their forelimbs, almost like gripping the branch?
Yeah, like they're holding on for dear life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now imagine how that grip changes when the branch suddenly moves.
They must have to adjust the pressure so quickly.
All the time. It's like they have these tiny pressure sensors in their paws giving them feedback.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. That fine motor control plus the balance, the proprioception, that's what lets them thrive in such a crazy environment.
You know, it makes me think about those videos of squirrels doing parkour.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe it's not just for fun. Maybe they're actually practicing those skills.
That's a really interesting thought. Play as a way to hone their movements, prepare for the unexpected.
I like that idea. So we've gone from bounding on the ground to this whole intricate dance of balance and control in the trees.
It's amazing what they can do.
But you mentioned earlier how these findings help us understand animal movement more broadly.
Right. It's not just about squirrels.
So what are some of the big takeaways here? What can we learn from these little acrobats?
I think one key thing is that movement isn't just about moving. It's about interacting with the environment
Okay.
in a way that's both efficient and safe. Squirrels are like the perfect example, needing to navigate both the ground and this unpredictable 3D world of trees.
Their bodies are like a blueprint for adapting to complex environments.
Exactly. And that has implications for all sorts of things: robotics, prosthetics, even search and rescue.
Oh, wow. I see what you mean.
Robots that can navigate rubble as well as a squirrel navigates branches. Imagine that.
That would be incredible.
Right. Or prosthetic limbs that can give that same level of feedback and control.
It's amazing to think we can learn so much from studying something as, well, seemingly simple as a squirrel.
It is. And we're only scratching the surface. There's still so much to learn about how they move and adapt.
Well, you've definitely made me see squirrels in a whole new light.
That's the power of science. It can make even the most familiar things seem new and amazing again. Speaking of amazing, we were just discussing those swaying branches, remember?
Oh, yeah, that was getting good.
And, well, that brings up some even more fascinating questions, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, a squirrel on a swaying branch, maybe even one that's breaking.
Yeah. Talk about a high-stakes situation. It really shows you how different the lab is from their actual, like, wild environment.
Right. Total different. In the wild, it's not just gravity. They've got wind, rain, other animals moving around.
Exactly. So much going on.
So how do they manage? Do they have, like, some sixth sense that tells them when a branch is going to break?
Not exactly a sixth sense, but it is this amazing combination of senses and instincts all working together.
Okay.
Vision's huge. They can check out the condition of the branch before even stepping on it.
Ah, makes sense. A visual inspection first.
Right. But they're also using touch, constantly gathering info about the texture, how stable it feels, even the vibrations.
Wow. So they're getting this full sensory download with every step.
Exactly. And then there's their reaction time. It's insane.
Yeah, gotta be quick up there.
If a branch starts to give way, they can instantly adjust their weight, shift their grip, even use the tail for counterbalance.
That tail, seriously, it's like a Swiss Army knife.
Right. It's
Wait,
amazing.
it makes you realize we see squirrels all the time, but they're like these incredible athletes.
They really are. Millions of years of evolution honing their bodies and instincts for this life in the trees.
So we've covered a lot. Those specialized limbs, the balance, proprioception.
All perfectly adapted for life up high.
But what's the big takeaway here? Why should we, care about how a squirrel moves?
Besides the fact that it's just awesome, I think it shows us how much we can learn from nature.
Okay, how so?
Look at their adaptations. They give us ideas for designing robots that can handle, like, really difficult terrain.
That's cool.
Right. Or prosthetics that can mimic that sensitivity and agility of a squirrel's paw.
Like learning from nature's best engineers.
Exactly. And the cool thing is we're just starting to scratch the surface. There's so much more to learn from these little guys.
Makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in, the movements of other animals.
That's the thing about scientific curiosity. It never really ends. Every answer just leads to more questions.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought.
Okay, hit me.
We've talked about how well adapted squirrels are to life in the trees.
For sure.
But what happens when that environment changes? Like with deforestation and habitat loss, how does that affect their ability to move and survive?
That's a great question. Really something to think about.
Definitely. And that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure.